Hi, my name is Lydia Kostopoulos, and I'm a strategy and emerging technologies advisor with a deep passion for body data tracking and human performance. All in the pursuit of feeling great and having as much energy as possible to pursue the things that fill me with joy and purpose. This interview series is about discovering how others have created and are curating their personal healthy aging protocol, one that aligns with their values and the person that they desire to be and become. I hope you find it to be of interest. Let's dive in. Hi, Jordan. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and tell me about your healthy aging protocol. But first, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Jordan. Really excited to be here. I'm always excited to talk about health. It's a huge topic in my life, maybe one of the most important, like next to love. I'm an entrepreneur, artist, sort of serial gatherer in real life. But what's most important today is that I'm a person who's super focused on self-improving, getting healthier, and really trying to live as long as a beautiful life as possible. So excited to be here today, excited to chat about health and what I'm doing in my life to do that.
Great. Thank you so much. I do want to mention that you are a gatherer, but it's more than that. You have a company and you experience design. So if you could just briefly explain what that's all about.
Yeah, I mean, for as long as I've, been a professional or sort of like at my craft, I've wanted to bring people together. That's all I've done. So I have an event design agency. We're really well known here in Canada, especially on the West Coast in Vancouver, where I'm from. And I've spent 15, 20 years just bringing people together in unique ways, building culture, and really trying to give everybody around me a sense of belonging, which I think is actually incredibly important to health. Social connections and friendships has been proven here recently to be like a big driver of a great life. So it's nice to be in that category as well.
Well, given the loneliness epidemic that's happening all over the world, I don't think you're going to go out of business. But that said, tell me, what is your healthy aging protocol?
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about this and preparing for our chat. And, I really believe that a big part of my protocol is rooted in motivation. I'm highly motivated to do the things that I do. And a lot of the things that I do are considered somewhat strange. I have a daily journal that is a big Excel document measuring all sorts of metrics in my life that I've been building over the course of 10 plus years. It started out really small and now it's massive. It's like a 10-minute journey to every morning to, measure how I'm feeling and all these various metrics. A lot of people find that somewhat strange. I love the data and I love measuring how I'm doing. And I think that really roots back to being highly motivated to self-improve, to be a healthier person, to be a better partner for my wife. All these things I'm highly motivated to do. And I pull a lot of that motivation from, the measurements and the data that I build every single day and have been for 10 years. But I have Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease. And I've had that pretty much my whole life. I was diagnosed when I was 12, so over 30 years ago now. And that experience of, really being very sick for a big portion of my life really inspired me to get better. I needed to overcome this. I needed to solve this problem. I have other really complicated genetics and lots of family health history issues. And those have also just doubled down and added to my motivation to be a healthier person. So that's a quick summary. And I think it's an important summary because I think, being a healthy person or being a self-improver, a problem solver around your personal health really needs a ton of motivation because it's hard. It is super hard to do on a daily basis.
So I know about your spreadsheet and I know how you track a lot of data. Yeah. What excites me about your story is how excited you are about the tracking, because I'm excited about tracking my data too. And there's some people I meet and I wear 3 wearables and all of that, and they look at it and they're like, oh, that's just too much data. It would give me anxiety. Yeah. And that's just the wearables. We're not talking about all the other data that we're tracking. And so like for different people, it's like different things that work for them,
Definitely.
right? So I want to kind of just delve a little bit into the data part. So as you're even talking about it, I know how like excited you are about your data. So I want to ask you, you've been doing this for 10 years. You have a longitudinal approach. So looking like over the years, how things are changing. And then every year you're not just like reviewing things, you're also adding new things that you want to track. What's the methodology in that where you're like, this year you went over it and you're like, I really need to add this, or the data that I've captured for that doesn't really capture what it is I'm after. Could you like walk through kind of what that mental thought process is and what the methodology is that you employ to add new variables and data in?
Yeah, well, I would say first it started really simply. It started just in tracking my Crohn's disease and having acute pain. And that was it. It was just very simple. It was one column. It wasn't even a daily journal. It was just when are these attacks, these acute issues happening? And that's how it started. And then each year, based on, hunches, based on ideas that I had to have less of those things happen, I started adding columns. And over the course of this decade, I've realized that there are so many things that affect us all personally. And so each year, I tend to add somewhere between 1 and 10 new things, 10 new columns. I believe now, after about 10 years and 60 different metrics, I believe I'm sort of at like maximum capacity, if you will. But I am like really motivated to add things that matter. I spend a lot of time, just personal time, listening to evidence out there that's emerging, the science that, is being published. I listen to lots of podcasts. I read a lot of books. I try and like soak in the knowledge that is like out there, that cutting edge knowledge. And from that information, I try to discern what personal metrics are really important to the latest evidence or the latest science in being, more healthy. And if something is missing from my tracker, from that like knowledge base that's like constantly evolving, then I'll add it. And if I think it's really important, after adding it, then I'll run an experiment around it. And I think that's what's really important for me about the information, is that it's not just about measuring, it's about measuring things through experimentation and seeing if I can improve a particular metric by running an experiment, or adding a supplement or changing a lifestyle routine. And I think that's what's really important here, is that it's not just data for the sake of data, it's data for the sake of improving that data with experiments. So I hope that gives a bit of a summary on how this has come to be and how I continue to manage it year over year.
Yeah, okay. So you measure a whole bunch of things, you continue to look at new sources and add an experiment. Could you give an example of like something that you added in and you experimented with and what that experiment kind of looked like?
Yeah, I mean, I have tons of examples over the years. There was like a couple years ago, a very like interested focus from like the science, health, longevity, sort of like knowledge sphere on fasting, intermittent fasting, water fasting. There was a lot of, sort of like research that showed various pathways that fasting activated and deactivated that might extend lifespan or create a healthier person. And so over the years, I've run some incredible experiments in just not eating. That included 1, 3, and 7 day full water fasts. At one point, I challenged myself to have an average of 20 hours for every single day to be fully fasted. So I basically was just eating a single meal every single day for a year. And it's interesting. What I found is that at one point in increasing my intermittent fasting, I hit a sort of hypoglycemic stage, which is like really low blood sugar. And I was using continuous glucose monitor in my arms to sort of track and monitor my blood glucose. And after getting to this like limit, this like 20-hour per day limit, what I found was that the combination of my diet and my fasting regime was just leaving me very hypoglycemic, which had a ton of different symptoms. So I had sort of hit the threshold of what was like a healthy fasting routine. And I've since dialed that back to like something in the range of like 16 hours per day, which is great for my Crohn's disease and leaves me still with like a managed blood sugar. So great example there. I'll give you one other one that I find really interesting is that I've got a sauna, a steam bath that's accessible to me. And so I've run experiments using that steam bath on a daily basis. And at one point I was, using that steam bath like 6 days a week and trying to run experiments as to how that affected my sleep patterns. And it's really quite interesting that the more I added, the longer duration that I added, the higher temperature that I added, the more frequency that I added to that steam bath, almost the better I was, one, feeling, and two, the better my sleep was, during the night. And so that's a routine that I try and keep really sacred, and I really try and make sure that is a big part of my life, because it's obvious just the impacts that it has both on sleep and just energy, how I feel in the mornings, as well as just generally speaking, I like how positive and happy I am on a daily basis.
Thanks for sharing that. That's it sounds like it's a lot of fun. How often are you running experiments? Like, is it like something every week or every month or every quarter?
I try, yeah, it's a really good question. I tend to try and do one major experiment at a time so I can gauge the effectiveness of that one change. But at times I'm doing sometimes multiple like small experiments. So I try to do one big like experiment at a time, and then try and understand how that change affects me, and then either like implement it going forward or sort of drop it because it's not very effective in like the ways that I thought it might be. And so I'm typically running one at a time, and they can vary. Sometimes they're like very short, a couple days. Sometimes they're weeks long. Sometimes they're months long. It really depends on like what I'm trying to achieve and like what I'm trying to experiment with, for sure. And I think it's important that you're sort of I'm designing for a very like sort of particular like sort of outcome.
Right. Yeah. So actionable. So then you're running multiple experiments, one big one a year. I want to just touch on what happens after the year. So every year, at the end of the year, you've got 365 days worth of data across 60 columns, plus your experiments. I know it's a little bit kind of like Christmas comes twice for you because you get really excited to go over it. So walk me through that process. At the end of the year, you're going through your data. Like, tell me all about that, what you're looking at, how you deal with that, how you plan the next year and all of that.
Yeah. Awesome question. You're right. I get super excited at the end of the year to sort of take a look at like how things have changed for me. One, I'm aging, and I know that with aging, things start slowing down and like get more complicated from a health perspective. But at the end of that year, I have a lot of information that I want to like parse through. So over the course of like the decade now, I definitely have like personal bests. So I love beating personal bests. Like as it relates to like my exercise this year, I'm going to have my best, my personal record for the like most amount of intense minutes and hours of exercise. I just know it. I can see it already in the data. And I'm really excited to see how that like macro trend has like affected various other things that I like think are really important. So yeah, at the end of the year, I'm always like compiling averages to see how I did in comparison to years past. I also like reflect on that quite a bit. And I think about myself in the year that passed and, subjectively, like, did I like actually enjoy doing the things that I was doing? And I think that's also like really important, that if like anything was like a real drag, or if I felt like in the reflection and writing like a longer journal article like about how I was feeling, if anything like seemed like it was like taking away from my life, I tend not to continue to do that, because I think that's also like a key piece. I just love living life. And if anything that's like taking away from that, I like try to get rid of that in my life. So the reflection's kind of like multi-part. It's like a subjective reflection every single year, but it's also truly about seeing these macro trends and how I'm feeling, the various things that I've done, and how that is affecting my, baseline metrics that I think are really important as I begin to age and things begin to slow down faster and faster. So yeah, it's a super fun time of year for me, and I love challenging myself and doing things that I've never done before.
So with all this data, you're empowered to kind of know what works for you in particular, what doesn't. And I love the whole personal best things. I'm going to try and do that. I love that. It also gives you kind of more agency when you go and speak with healthcare practitioners. So what's it like when you talk to the various healthcare practitioners in your life, when you come to them with all this data? Are they overwhelmed? Are they happy? Do they know how to use it? Or like, tell me, what's that experience like?
Yeah, this is a great question. I would say that I have a lot of health practitioners in my life, and I think that I've built those relationships up over many, many years. It starts with my general, like sort of practitioner, my general doctor, who has absolutely no clue what I do, because if I even mentioned what I do, he would say that, Jordan, you're crazy. You're wasting your time. Because at the general practitioner level, I think that there's no real cutting edge knowledge that really gets down to that level. And so I like encourage anybody who has like specialized health motivations or like definitely special needs to like, advance your health practitioner and like get a higher expert, a master of the craft, at least one. I have like 4 or 5 different people that I see on a regular basis or like chat with, or friends. We talk about the science quite a bit. And I think like as you get more advanced with like the health practitioner that you're seeing, whether it's a functional medicine doctor or a really experienced naturopath or like a specialist of some type, I think that they become more interested in the information that I have. But I would say even at the most advanced level, and this is like a really key insight or piece of wisdom for anybody who's like has special needs or is like highly motivated to like improve themselves, is that even the most masterful health practitioner, the one that is the most interested in, personalized medicine, they just are lacking in time to even like review what's happening with you personally. And they can only take like a really broad, like sort of like look at some of the information and make like really quick assessments, because they just don't have those cycles in them. They're seeing so many patients typically. And so I'm really excited at the future of computer interfaces, like, with like these large language models and in the burgeoning AI movement, because I think that's going to really help these practitioners with people who have more information about themselves, really take a look at those like outcomes and, be able to analyze that data more quickly, because they just don't have the time to be like super personalized to every single person. Of course, unless you're paying, a lot of money for somebody to like, spend that time on you personally. So, I would say like, as you get up into the, real experts in personalized medicine and the latest knowledge in science, they're very interested. They just don't have the time to actually like dive into the information. So in bringing it to them, you really need to have like very clear and concise sort of like insights for them that they can pull from and then make assessments on. And I think that's the only thing that it's really useful for at this stage. But I have a hopeful sort of like vision for the future with large language models. This data can become extremely powerful.
It's really nice to hear your experience and how it's been in terms of your interactions. I think that we are in the middle of a lot of transformation across every industry, and definitely the future of aging is got a big, bold, huge future that is not yet here. But I agree with you that data is going to be at the heart of it, and you already have a lot of it. So that's great. So we've covered kind of, so your protocol is gather tons of data, experiment, see what works for you, what doesn't work for you, recap at the end of the year, go over that, and then try and plan for the new year in terms of what you want to improve or things you want to take out or add in. And for you, it's about having like a really motivated personality. But here you've created your own N of one to get yourself to where and how it is you want to feel. Did I capture that?
Yeah, highly motivated, measured, experimenting constantly, looking for great outcomes. N of one just for me. And I don't talk about this very often with like very many people because it's just like N of ones aren't really that interesting to other people. And I think that the one thing that I like really think is important is like, how do I make what I do sort of applicable to other people? And I think that that's like maybe the main question here is that like, of course, like I'm tracking, things that are really important to me. I'm highly motivated to do so. It doesn't bother me in any capacity to spend that 10 minutes every single morning and to be thinking about it during the day. But I don't think that's going to work for everybody. And so I think everybody needs to have their own little process and run their own little experiments, however that feels good for them. And you don't need a 60-column spreadsheet that's been built over decades. I don't think that that's necessary. I think that might be like totally harebrained crazy, but it works for me. And I think that that's what's like really amazing here is that like, for me, I'm a healthier, happier, like person. That's just straight up. And I believe that I've managed to put myself in that position by understanding myself. And so for me, it works. For others, I don't know. I don't know if everyone's going to be as motivated or as detailed, or maybe the data for some people gives them anxiety, which is a really common, you mentioned it, a really, really common thing that I hear with wearables. So, I think it's designing for yourself, and this just so happens to work for me.
This is exactly the purpose of this interview series. It's to showcase people's different healthy aging protocols, and see kind of how people have, like you said, designed it for themselves. And it's so amazing to see how unique it is for each person. So one final question. We are entering a new year. I want to know, what are the things that are on your mind that you're like, I want to do this year, or this experiment, or I want to buy this gadget, or I want to try, like, what are the things, your bucket list for the next year, whether it's data tracking or experimentation?
I've done a lot of really odd things, sometimes like maybe like risky things in the past in terms of like experiments or applications, new supplements. Where I've settled is actually like very simple. For the year ahead, I'm really focused on like those things that I find are like most effective and like really straightforward. A ton of exercise, insanely great sleep, and a clean, like highly nutritious, low sugar for me diet. And everything else is secondary. Everything. It is about a ton of exercise, and there's a lot of complexities and layers to that. Incredible sleep, which I think is probably the most important piece of any health protocol for anyone in the world, is incredibly great sleep. And then I know for me with Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune of the gut, a really clean and nutritious diet that I've experimented with over the years and works for me, which is a low saccharide diet. And I think that those things moving forward are my like focal points. After like so many experiments with like really, outlier sort of things to try, I'm back to like the core. And I think that core is just the absolute most important focal point for me. And so I'm really trying to like dive deep on each one of those and really hone in to like squeeze that extra, 10% or 5% out of those three categories, because I think those are the three that make the most impact.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see what kind of experiments you're going to be doing in those core categories and what you come up with. So thank you so much for taking the time to tell me about your healthy aging protocol.
Thanks, Lydia. Nice to be here.
This series is meant to capture personal stories of individual healthy aging protocols and is for informational purposes only, and it does not constitute providing medical advice or professional services. Those seeking personal medical advice should consult with a licensed healthcare practitioner. If you'd like to follow Jordan, you can find him on LinkedIn and on Twitter X at Jordan Kallman, JordanKallman, and on Instagram at jordan.kallman. And his company is called the Social Concierge, and you can find it at thesocialconcierge.com.